Today, with the help of a friend again, I'm going to explain the attorney review period for real estate transactions in the state of New Jersey. My guest coming on shortly is our preferred attorney at Streamline Properties on Market, brokered by EXP, Andy Weinstein, whose main office is located in Montclair. Uh, just between us and Andy, we've done at least 150 transactions together just in the last year and a half to 2 years. And we have a great synergy. So when you hear from Andy, that's usually what we're working together on. We figure out and work the attorney review process together. In the state of New Jersey, all transactions go into attorney review after an offer is accepted. Here comes Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
Good. I have already gotten us introduced, told everyone about our long-standing relationship, but thanks for coming on and doing this for us.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of going plaid mode today, so we're in good shape here, different shades. So for this video, which is probably part one of many, I want to help explain the attorney review period. I have my own video like primer on this, but I thought having me and you go through kind of what both of our roles is and what you do in attorney review versus what's it all about. Why don't we just begin by start explaining what the attorney review process is, because it doesn't happen in all states, but it is an attorney state in New Jersey. So if you have an attorney, you're going to go through this attorney review period.
Absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Excuse me, New Jersey is an attorney state, for better or worse. When it comes to attorney review, the main goal of attorney review is for buyers and, of course, sellers also, for both parties, to have an opportunity to speak with an attorney before the contract becomes binding, which is what happens when attorney review concludes. The process is set up this way in New Jersey because, as you know, but for the benefit of everyone else, most offers that are made when buyers are working in consultation with a realtor. Most buyers aren't even thinking about an attorney yet until their offer is accepted. So once the buyer's offer is actually the realtor form contract filled in with the assistance of their realtor. Yep. It gets submitted to the seller. If the seller accepts the offer, they countersign, and that's what becomes the contract. And then it benefits the parties to then obviously review with their respective attorneys.
Yeah, so I mean, once we have a countersigned contract, we have an actionable contract. Like both parties have agreed, it's signed, and I think that's what some people forget. What you said is important. In attorney review, you're really validating the contract, making sure each attorney's making sure that both sides didn't miss anything. But say we didn't have attorneys, we have a valid contract to move forward on, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and so the realtor standard form contract contains the provision in there that attorney review shall commence upon the full execution of the contract, and there are 3 business days, not including obviously holidays or weekends. Yeah. Yes, that's business, because most attorneys only work business hours and business days, accordingly, apparently, right? Yeah. So it's a funny process we have here. So this what I'm about to say applies only to the realtor standard form contract. Because otherwise, presumably, you'd have attorneys involved drafting a contract. But the realtor form contract, there are no attorneys involved yet. So when the contract is executed, it essentially is an agreement between the parties. It's just not binding yet. So the parties would need to either forego the ability to be an attorney review, or attorney review has to start within those 3 business days. And once attorney review concludes, then the contract becomes binding. So to really answer your question, you do have an agreement between the parties once both have signed. It's just not binding yet. You're not locked in. Of course, our goal when we represent buyers is to try to move through attorney review as quickly as possible. And obviously, we don't want to gloss over anything. We don't want to shortchange anything or any review of the contract. It's important to just move expeditiously. So we want to make sure that our clients understand the contract, understand the terms, if they're at all different than what they offered, because the sooner we get out of attorney review, the sooner the contract becomes binding.
Right. That's important for two reasons. One, with the heat of the market over the past 2 years in New Jersey, and still now, other offers could come in until we have a binding contract. So, like you said, we're not trying to move too fast, but we also can't wait around because we don't want our clients to lose out to another offer who's just intent on knocking us out, because all offers have to be presented to the seller. So if we're kind of messing around for 3 days and they have a couple other offers, they may just knock us out and there was nothing we could do at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always the fear, because until attorney review is concluded, the contract isn't binding. I like to tell clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, that attorney review is the most time sensitive part of the deal. There's nothing that quite compares to it, because literally every minute can count. Not to over dramatize it, but every minute counts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So going into attorney review, what should the buyers be prepared for, or really sellers, either side? What should they be prepared for? I mean, you kind of explain what you're going to do. You go through the contract with them, and both sides, both buyers' attorneys and sellers' attorneys, have pretty much language to negate parts of the contract that are irrelevant, because the whole contract doesn't apply in most transactions. But then, are there things that are ever negotiated in attorney review? Some things do come up from time to time.
Yeah, some things do come up. Excuse me. I think, one of the things that we're always contending with is when one of the parties decides, well, now that I've spoken to an attorney, I want to change some of the terms.
Yeah.
I am of the belief that my initial mindset is that when approaching attorney review, my assumption is always that the buyer offered what they intended with the terms they wanted, and that the seller accepted this because it had the terms that they wanted. With that said, my personal style is not, do you want to change anything? My personal style is more so just to make sure that people understand, okay, this is what it says with respect to inspections. This is what it says, it being the contract. This is what it says regarding the inspection contingency. This is what it says regarding the mortgage contingency or an appraisal waiver, things of that nature. And we're going through it just to make sure they understand. And the other thing I'm looking for is this standard? Is what we're, and I don't propose too many changes to the contract. I think my letter is about 2 pages. But we get some other letters that are, anywhere upward to 8 or 9 pages. And I have a cup of coffee before I jump into that. And, we're really looking to make sure, okay, what's standard? And there is a bit of back and forth at times, unfortunately, when it comes to attorney review.
Yeah, I know, because we've talked about this so much. Like, I always felt like we're writing the contracts. It's so, for you to know the agent, or to know my whole team, it's certainly helpful in the system, because you know that our clients have been properly advised. We don't know that all realtors are giving them all the information they need. So it is conceivable that clients could come to a ratified contract to attorney review, not really fully understanding what they agreed to, which is just kind of a tough part of the business. So I can understand where things could go haywire, but the way that we've always done business is, like you said, you assume that we've made the agreement. Realtors are, supposed to be professional. They're held by ethical standards. So this is what we've agreed to. And attorney review is not necessarily a time where we're going to go readjusting the contract, because like we said before, they may have other offers. So if you're messing around in attorney review trying to switch the provisions that you already agreed to, they're just going to go take another offer. And just to confirm, during attorney review, either party can just opt out for no reason, correct?
Correct. Either party can cancel for, as I like to say, for any reason or no reason. It's just simply, it can be I've changed my mind for no reason at all. So that can be difficult, especially in, the heat of the market over the, what it is now, and even over the last 2 years. Just the volume of offers and the volume of interest and the lack of inventory has combined to really sort of create a crunch when it comes to attorney review.
Yeah.
Clients that you work with and your team are very well prepared. They understand what they've offered, which for me, during attorney review with the buyer, that's half the battle. If you understand what you offered, then we're able to, that's a much more advanced jumping off point for us with attorney review, which makes it flow, I would say, a
Yeah.
lot
I
sooner
mean,
and much more streamlined.
percentage chances for a better smooth closing process. I mean, we've obviously talked about it, but I always feel that I don't think that buyers and sellers really understand how important it is that all parties on your side kind of know how to work together. Not meaning you always have to use the providers, but like we should know or be able to have a good relationship, because when you don't know the attorney or you don't know the lender, it's just someone who may do business a different way. And then we're all pushing in the wrong direction. When we do transactions, together, we all know exactly what we're going to do, who needs to tell the client what. And I think that makes for a really smooth transaction. It's something that buyers really need to take more heed of, because it's not necessarily that, I mean, if they choose an out of area attorney, they just don't know the general practice of the area. Has that happened? I think that's an interesting one. Like, we do transactions all over the state with you, but we kind of know how to play in all the markets. But like each county, the general way that the flow of it goes is not always the same, right?
No, it's very different. Excuse me, when we're dealing with, whether we're dealing with a condo in Hoboken or whether we're dealing with a single family home out in Sussex County, those are two vastly separate transactions. And then there could be the sale of property in, Central or South Jersey, and where in some of those areas they don't use attorneys. Agents take on a very different role there. So really, depending on where the property is and the specific characteristics of the transaction, you could be dealing with different customs, different norms, especially with properties that have, whether there's a homeowners association, whether there is whether the property is part of a planned unit development, whether there's a well versus public water, whether there's a septic system versus, public sewer, all of these things come into play.
Yeah.
Too much gesticulating here, but yeah, all of these things come into play. And those are the things we look for in the beginning. When I'm having that initial conversation with the client, when I'm reviewing the contract, I'm looking for things for all of these sort of variables that many of them I just mentioned, but also which contingencies, and then, we sort of sink it all into here and then bring it on into writing and have that conversation with the client.
Yeah, I've always felt over the years that the way an attorney like kind of works a real estate transaction is just can have a huge bearing on the outcome. Because if it becomes adversarial too quickly, like obviously I'm a former attorney, so we've talked about this a lot with our backgrounds. It's hard to not get excited about things, but then we both have to place ourselves like we're just the conduit for the client, right? Because you can have someone on the other side who's like really a pain, but there's only so much you can really engage, because we're trying to make sure basically our job together is to keep the transaction on track and keep our side protected the best that we can, but it's not always easy.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. And one of the things that I always try to keep in mind is, we're never allowed as, attorneys, or even I would say really probably even as agents too, in terms of an etiquette. More so attorneys, hard and fast rule. We can't have dialogue. At least I can't have dialogue with someone who's represented by another attorney, the other party. So one of the things that's always difficult, and I know we've talked about this before, whether it comes to attorneys or agents or things like that, is trying to figure out, okay, what is the mindset and position and attitude of the seller or the other party, the seller or the buyer, the other party, versus what may just be the personality of the other party. Are they actually speaking, and what's going on? And I try to filter out, it's my practice and our team's practice here to not copy clients when we send emails, but to blind copy them.
Yeah.
Some attorneys copy their clients, and then,
like
yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I like to be able to filter out things that may cause our clients undue unimportant stress. And one of the things I try to do, and we try to do as our team here, is to try to filter out all of the noise and to just allow them, because let's face it, the process is stressful enough as it is. You're talking about a substantial financial asset. Clients may have children, families, extended families, et cetera. Plus the concept of just the thought of moving stresses people out.
Yeah.
I try to filter that out. Our clients don't need to hear or see another attorney or another agent or someone else chiming in on something that may ultimately just cause confusion for our clients. So it's an extra layer of protection. It's an extra layer of work, but I think, yeah, I'm not a fan of the copying of the clients on emails. Blind copying, yes.
Yeah, we have a system, obviously, both of us, to say like removed client just in case. But yeah, it's a safety mechanism. They're not supposed to be on every communication, but be party to what happened in all the communications. Is there anything that you see that's like the biggest kind of problem that happens in attorney review? I was trying to think of the things that come up the most, but generally it really contractually based, whether if the contract is solid, attorney review should be easy, barring cold feet, really.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as pretty straightforward. One of the things that I find fascinating is that a lot of times, and just to backtrack for a second, the custom in New Jersey is that the buyer's attorney sends the letter first to, typically because in theory, a buyer is supposed to be sort of affirming what they're on board with.
Right.
For better or worse, that's the custom. So, in many ways, when you represent a buyer, in some ways it's easier because you start the process. You can control when it starts. You can control the opening. You can control the tempo in terms of, or the tenor, I should say.
Yeah.
Letting everyone know it's a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to working with you. Here's the buyer's letter. When we represent the seller, we get letters, and one of the things that I keep coming back to, and I will say it to anyone who's listening, so I apologize because you've heard this before, but one of the things that makes attorney review frustrating for me as an attorney is that we'll get these 8 or 9 page letters, and there are huge chunks of it that just aren't applicable. For example, there might be a huge chunk of it dedicated to provisions involving a homeowners association, but there's a homeowners association applicable to this property, or a whole section regarding the appraisal contingency. Meanwhile, our buyers made a generous offer and it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Or portions relating to inspections or things that don't apply. And also, I guess more importantly, there's no need to just repeat what's already in the contract.
Yeah.
We don't need to know the contract. I mean, one of the things that I do say, which is what you've said earlier, which is the contract has certain terms in it, and we don't need to vary from those because the parties have already agreed to it.
Agreed.
We've already agreed to it, and there are standard changes that every attorney makes. But again, that's probably in the 2 to 3 page realm versus the 8 or 9 page realm. But hope springs eternal for 2023 that attorneys become less verbose.
Yeah, it's tough. We know them well. We are them. I just think, I think attorney review becomes like scary for some because they hear attorneys and they think like, well, now we're getting into like litigation. It's like,
That's right.
No litigation. We're just like checking the contract, make sure everything's okay. So once we complete attorney review, that means both attorneys have signed off. We're good. Then we technically go under contract. At that point, we do have a binding contract, and then no one else can kind of knock out your offer at that point legally. Stuff happens, but legally your offer is now binding and we're moving forward until something happens, which does happen sometimes on home inspection, which is a whole nother video. But that's the security, and that's why we move as fast as possible through attorney review so we can get it to the binding stage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Once we've concluded attorney review, we have a binding contract, and a lot of times people will ask questions. Once we conclude attorney review, they'll ask questions. And the answer is almost always, what does the contract say? Sometimes people will ask questions. Well, how does this work? How does that work? And the answer is always, well, let's take a look at the contract. Let's go back and take a look. Let's look at the contract. Let's see if it was modified during attorney review. But the end of attorney review means that the parties are bound to this agreement. I like to tell clients that you think of the contract as a roadmap, and that the contract is a roadmap for the transaction, and it gives you the rules of the game and
all the directions are in there.
all they're in there. And it's hard to follow, and I understand, and I try to the hard part is always, and I like to say this, but it's not just about, in these transactions, it's not just about giving legal advice. I mean, we have to look, you have to take care of people. You have to look at, and it doesn't mean that we substitute our own judgment, but it means, okay, if I were you, here's how I would want this to be explained to me. I wouldn't want somebody using overly lawyerly language, using anything overly complex, but just saying, okay, if you agree to accept the terms of this contract, here's what the process would look like. And we go through that. But yeah, that the end of attorney review, and by the way, attorney review can only be concluded by or with the authorization of the party themselves. So a lot of times, people, other perhaps less informed agents than you and the rest of your team will say, oh, why can't
Included.
why are we still in attorney review? Why are we doing this? And I always say, I can't act on my own. There are some things where I have discretion, but concluding attorney review and, agreeing to the terms of the contract, or saying that you understand everything, I don't have the power to do that. Only the clients can. So it's helpful for clients to go into attorney review knowing that it's the most time sensitive portion of the deal. If there were ever a time to not go into the woods and turn off your phone for an extended period of time, that would be it. We're spoiled over here because you and your team, you do the pre-teaching. And so your clients understand that, yes, okay, I understand. I've got to be on standby here during attorney review. And and that's, in many ways, attorney review is sort of the linchpin of what we do, even though people moan and groan about attorneys, me being one of them.
Yeah.
And even though it sometimes can be very quick, but it's one of those things where we're an attorney state and we've all gotten used to it.
Yeah, and I mean, you were saying one thing that we do that helps you and that helps our clients is we have that 26-minute contract video, which I'm going to put at the top. It's actually going to be over you when we get into this, unless they put us side by side in the recording. Yeah, I'll put it right up there. But that kind of helps them go through the whole contract so that it's not foreign when they get it, which means they've already had a full review when they come to you, so they understand, where the deposits go and everything like that. Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate it. And then at your office, when they come in, you have a separate assistant for sellers and a separate assistant for buyers, which I think has always been really helpful for us, because then you have one person who's always helping you just on that side, and they know exactly what to do. So that'd be Dory on the buyer side, Melissa on the seller side. And they really help control the transaction with you and with us on all the many emails over the time frame.
I'm very fortunate, to say the least. But I agree with you. I've always found that having someone else other than me as part of the team, as part of the bigger team, but also someone affiliated with my team here, so that people at the very least, they hear a voice. If they're feeling unsure about something, they can reach out by email to not only me, but to someone else. And that way I'm not a bottleneck. And it also, by delineating, it allows, one paralegal working on buyers with me and one working on sellers with me, it allows for specialization. And so it allows for a smaller universe of possibilities. And it really does, it really makes a difference. And I will not bore everyone with the minutiae here, but the things, that sort of the closing checklist on the seller side is vastly different than that on the buyer side. And so just to know, for someone to be able to know without thinking twice, okay, here are the things you're going to need to do, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, in order to get you closed. And I'm very lucky. I have great teammates, but yeah, I do think that's the model. Not every attorney does it that way. People have tried to sell me on doing it a different way, and both my team and I have always thought, why fix it if it ain't broke?
Yeah, no, let's just keep the wheel rolling. So your main office is on North Willow in Montclair. What's the main number for the office, just so everybody knows when they need assistance when they're going into a transaction?
Thank you. Absolutely. 973-415-8600. So 973-415-8600. We are also available 24/7 on the World Wide Web at andyweinsteinlaw.com.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I think it is important. Like, we do this a lot. I think it's important to give an attorney a call beforehand, because if it's great to build that relationship. When you start making offers, you should really be in touch with an attorney, because you're going to win at some point. So it's nice to know that when that happens, you're already in. So like the way that we do it a lot is we'll introduce you first so they're comfortable, and then eventually we're going to win one. And I think that the process goes a lot smoother like that. Again, it's just making it comfortable the whole way makes it much easier for a smoother transaction in the end.
Completely agree. Completely
All
agree.
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was
Yeah,
fantastic.
thanks, Andy. We'll be back probably with part 2, which will be home inspections, everybody's favorite. So we'll
My favorite, your
yeah,
favorite.
we'll
Everyone's
save
favorite.
our thoughts on that for later. So I really appreciate it, Andy. Always a pleasure to see you, and I'm sure I will see you soon at the closing table.
Likewise. Thank you,
All
Jonathan.
right.
Take care.
Thanks, Andy. See ya.